know, Nicholas, there might be some lag to this. I see you're kind of skipping around, but Nicholas in particular has been part of the group for a long time. Early in, recognized that it was bogus early in, you know, and I appreciate all the help, and he's still here, and it's super cool, and I really appreciate that kind of stuff. And I know anybody that actually bothers to look is going to know how bogus this is, and it's really hard to get people to take notice in the first place. But I know he's been out there, and I know he's been doing things, and I know he's been connected, and I want to go visit the guy, you know, and be on the show and go visit the guy and all sorts of stuff. I mean, I just think it's super cool. All the help, thank you. Super cool, and I appreciate it. And everybody else too, but yeah, he's in particular, I don't know, he jumps smart. When people talk about like other people's shows, I don't really know other people's shows, but I know his, because his was like one of the first ones that got mentioned, and I'm like, really? Somebody's actually doing something about the case? I'm like, oh, that's cool. So anyway, I don't know the guy, but really appreciate it.
Heyo, and welcome to this very impromptu stream. I just found out about this letter. Hold on. And yes, I'm back upstairs. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I just found out about this letter. I saw it on Steve Gosney's Twitter. I went into the letter, I got the letter, and now I'm going to share that letter with you. And with me in this, I have... Oh.
Hey, hi. Man. Sorry, I wasn't ready.
Yeah, hi. Hi. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man.
Oh, good to know. Have you had any offers of the T-shirt yet, or
we're gonna auction it? So, in fact, let me grab it. I got it right here. Hold on.
Oh yeah. For you who don't know, Andrew Branca got a hate mail. Yeah. Andrew Branca got a hate mail. There he
is. This is being presented contrary to the orders, the commands I've received from the head of training of the Colorado Public Defender's Office. I've been prohibited from showing this T-shirt on any social media stream. So, but this is it. This is the T-shirt they gave me. This is my entire compensation for speaking at their conference. And now they want it back, or they want me to burn it. So we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is auction it. We're going to set up an auction. We're going to do it on Nick's Ricada Laws stream. I'm not sure when. We're setting up the auction software, but within the next couple of days, I expect.
Yeah. And for the people in my chat who doesn't know about this, can you give an elevator pitch on what happened?
Sure. So some months ago, I was approached by the Colorado Public Defender's Office, asked to give a legal consult and expert witness testimony in a murder trial of one of their indigent clients. Of course, it's the Public Defender's Office. They have no money. I agreed to do it for free. This would be well in excess of $10,000 worth of work on my behalf. I did it for free. My testimony was pivotal to the acquittal. The jury told us, lead counsel told me, and we got him acquitted on charges of murder, manslaughter, and negligent homicide. And after that great result, the Colorado Public Defender's Office asked me to speak at their annual meeting, again for free, which I did, traveled there at my own expense, gave a talk for an hour, and my total compensation was the T-shirt, which was fine. I wasn't expecting any compensation. But a couple days ago, I get a letter from the head of this conference, the head of training for the Colorado Public Defender's Office, telling me that apparently, although I didn't say anything explicitly racist or anything, apparently I caused emotional damage and trauma to the lawyers in the audience because some of the cases I referred to in my talk involved Black defendants. Also, I interrupted a yoga session that was happening in the room that I was to speak in when I interacted with the audiovisual guys to get my laptop set up. And that was also racist. And therefore, the Public Defender's Office has made me persona non grata. They will never again make use of my expert legal services for their clients, even though it's free to them. So that's where we stand. Oh, and they want their T-shirt back, or they want me to burn it.
Yeah, and all of that is on Branca's channel, and you can watch the entire stream where he reads the letter, and it's amazing. But we are here for a complaint. Jennifer Roy, one of highly regarded by Mr. This is a problem with impromptu. By Mr. Gosney, very highly regarded forensic DNA experts. She trains people in testing and testimony about DNA. No, sorry, Tiffany Roy, not Jennifer Roy. Sorry. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Jen. Now, who is Tiffany Roy? Let me just, so people get a grasp about her from her LinkedIn. She's a forensic DNA expert based in Florida. And she is the owner, president of Forensic Aid. She's an expert working group on human factors in forensic DNA interpretation volunteer for the National Institute of Standards and Technology. I mean, she basically helps write the books on how to conduct yourself as a DNA expert in trials. And
for people who don't know, DNA is not really kind of an absolute measure of anything. There's a lot of human interpretation that goes into DNA analysis.
Yeah. And so she wrote a complaint. And when she writes a complaint, it's a kind of time to listen. And it's the Zachariah Anderson-Case. And you have the Gives and Go to Zach's Defense Fund. And it's pinned to the top of the chat. So, yeah, let's go right into it. And please give any input when you can. Because it starts Tiffany Roy, Forensic Aid LLC in Palm Beach, to Eva.
Can you make it bigger? Can you make it larger?
That would be the max.
Okay, no worries.
Eva Louise Marie King at University Avenue, Madison. Miss King, this formal complaint is written to Nicole Rome, who is the administrator of the Division of Forensic Sciences, DFS, at the Wisconsin Department of Justice, DOJ, about the testimony of Lisa Treffinger in the case of Wisconsin v. Zachariah Anderson. This testimony is publicly available on YouTube, beginning around the 5:14 mark of this video, and the streaming of a testimony can and should be observed. It was provided to me by a lawyer/blogger who asked my opinion of the testimony for his research. That would be Mr. Gosney. After reviewing her videotape testimony, I had several serious quality concerns, which I determined needed to be reviewed by the laboratory quality team. Oh, thank you, Julio, for your super chat. Glad to see Branka on here.
Pure luck. I was in the office working anyway when I saw Nick's tweet.
And she writes, I hope Tiffany's complaint gets some attention. Yeah, hence my stream, to get the word out bigger. And I will probably, if I can, I will have the link to the PDF in my description of the stream. So thank you so much. Normally, a complaint about quality concerns would be directed to the quality assurance manager at a specific crime laboratory. It is noted on the DOJ DFS website that there is a specific bureau in place to control and preserve efficient quality within the laboratory, known as the Quality Assurance Bureau, QAB. However, the search for a direct name, phone number, and email for QAB was unsuccessful. This bureau is meant to uphold their quality statement, which is, and here it is, probably taken directly from the website. Do you want to take that, Andrew?
Or you want me to read it?
Yeah, sure.
It's funny. I was just looking at this same quality statement on the website of the Colorado Public Defender's Office. It reads, Division of Forensic Sciences quality statement to achieve and maintain accreditation under the international standard, general requirements for the competence of testing and calibration laboratories, blah, 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 a forensic science accrediting body's supplemental requirements and all other statutory regulatory standards required to provide forensic services, and to use and support technically sound standards and guidelines of the Organization of Scientific Areas Committee registry as applicable. So there's rules for the laboratory. They say they're going to abide by those rules, basically. Then there are support goals. They're quality support goals. The QB works to uphold goals within the system of quality established by the DFS to, 1, provide high-quality, error-free forensic analysis, which is to be able to withstand rigorous challenges. That would be nice. Provide impartial reporting of scientifically accepted forensics analysis. Maintain the integrity of submitted evidence by protecting it from loss, deterioration, and contamination. Provide timely forensic services to the criminal justice system in the state of Wisconsin. Ensure DFS employees are trained in the skills necessary to perform their work. Ensure continual improvement of the quality system, and fulfill the DFS quality statement.
Yeah, I really like this. Provide impartial reporting, because I've been covering this year 10 or 11 trials, all of them containing some kind of DNA expert testimony. And that impartial bit is often lacking. Is that your...
Well, it's kind of inherent to the way we structured the process, right? That this is a state agency that's performing this work for another state agency. It's the same kind of problems we have with interactions with the prosecutor's office and law enforcement agencies. Yeah. They're both state agencies. And sometimes you get the sense that the cops are not looking to be impartial in how they enforce the law. And the prosecutors are not impartial. You know, if you're a witness or juror, you're a prospective juror in a trial in America, one of the questions they always ask you is, would you believe a police officer more than any other witness just because he's a police officer? And if you say yes, you're stricken from the jury. You're not allowed to give them more credibility. But prosecutors' offices do that all the time, you know, but we're not supposed to do that. So, I mean, a good argument, public policy argument could be made that if this kind of testing is supposed to be impartial and in a fair justice system, that's what you would want, it should not be done by a state agency. They should contract to an independent agency laboratory that does this kind of analysis, that does not have a vested interest in the outcome of the trial.
Yeah. Who should work for both state and defense?
Right.
Equally. I mean, that's the kind of system we have here in Sweden. Although it is the DNA testing agency is a government, they do it on behalf of both the state and the defense. Now, the defense often sends it out to independent contractors by their own pay, but most of everything is done by the same government office. Now, we are only 10 million people, so we only have one of those, and they are stacked up. Sometimes you even have trials with murder trials without DNA analysis done. Just a preliminary testing is done.
Oh yeah, we don't do DNA testing routinely here for trials. It's only these high profile trials that you see this kind of thing.
Yeah. Wilhelmer Media, 2 detectives / cops on Zach's case also testified against Rittenhouse. Yeah. I'm not surprised. Let's see here. And Tiffany Roy continues. The last 2 quality support goals listed are meant to make sure quality control and assurance are reviewed, maintained, and updated if required. Though when I attempted to find contact information for this bureau, it was not publicly available, which defeats the goal of continual improvement of the quality system if complainants have no direct line of communication on laboratory products. The only contact information available for the DFS are phone numbers for each laboratory location, such as the Milwaukee laboratory, which number I called, and was transferred between 3 different people over a 10-minute period of interrogation by laboratory staff. They asked me what my interest in the laboratory was, where I was located, what agency I worked for, and to what my complaint pertained. None of these questions were appropriate, warranted, or germane to the inquiry.
Yeah, so this is the conduct of a state agency hiding under the bed, listening to the footsteps of accountability coming into the room. They're terrified.
Yeah.
Someone's looking at them. They don't like it.
Oh no, somebody's looking at me. Because on phone, you when you talk to people on phone, there will be no record of it. That's why when you call a government agency,
unless it's recorded,
unless it's recorded for training purposes or something like that, and can be used against you, but it's not recorded as a public paper. What do you call it? Publicly available document. If you send in a complaint like this, it becomes a publicly available document, and states hate that. They don't. Yeah. After 10 frustrating minutes, I was provided with the email address kingeml at blah, blah, blah. I was provided the email with no name of the person who would receive that email or what their title was within the laboratory. I had to investigate this on my own after the call. In my research, I discovered Miss King is the Forensic Sciences Director and not the Quality Assurance Manager. The difficulty I had obtaining the information to submit a complaint is unacceptable and something that should be investigated in and of itself as a quality matter. So, yeah, she starts out just quite hard by saying, this agency, what are you hiding?
There is no identifiable quality assurance function here.
Yeah, there is none. By name only. They claim they have it, but apparently there are none.
You wouldn't pay $100 for a product on the internet from a company that looked like this, right?
No.
You can't contact anyone. There's no phone number. There's nobody identified as being in charge. What is this? It's like one of those ATM machines you just see like in a corner of a bad part of town, and you know what's going to happen if you put your card in there. And they're just gonna swipe it.
Yeah. Oh, don't do that because yeah. Or the corner store with interesting products. Yeah, don't swipe your card because that's why I prefer cash. See, it's you can only pay by card here. No, we have a legal requirement in Sweden that you have to accept cash as payment. Haha, up yours, cash-free society. But this is not about that. This complaint is about the testimony of Lisa Treffinger, offered in the case of Wisconsin v. Zachariah Anderson. Upon review of her testimony, Lisa Treffinger reports she took a position in the quality assurance program as a specialist. With such a position, she should certainly be interviewed about her sworn statements in the above-mentioned case and should not be involved in the investigation of this quality complaint. Yeah. Of course, because if the complaint is about her testimony, she should not be the one investigating it. Somehow, I think this will be swept under the rug, but the more people who sees it, who hears about it, who sees the complaint, the more they can't hide. I mean, sunlight is the best cure against secrecy. Yeah, they pop the balloon. Miss Treffinger made several misstatements and overstatements of the tests she performed and the data she reported in the Anderson case. She makes statements when prompted that use the phrase reasonable degree of scientific certainty, which has no meaning in science, and the use of which has been recommended against. Okay, let's see here. National Institute for Standards and Technology, National Commission of Forensic Science, recommendations on use of the term reasonable scientific certainty adopted at NCFS meeting in 2016. So for at least 7 years,
Yeah, and we don't like that phrase in the law because what it actually suggests to the jury is effective certainty, and
Yeah.
there's not certainty.
Yeah. It sounds like it's one of these buzzwords like they use in Turmark. They have only buzzwords that makes everything sound really good. As in, they have the characteristics of. That doesn't mean anything. Yeah, it's a bullet with a casing. It fits in a gun. That's characteristic. Damn, I can't pronounce that word. Yeah. So, and here it is again with the wordings of reasonable degree of scientific certainty. It's just buzzwords to make it sound better. She goes on to say she can determine the source of the DNA generally by completing testing and provided evidence, though this is one of the first limitations addressed by Peter Gill in the publication Misleading DNA Evidence, Reasons for Miscarriages of Justice. Okay, yeah, that's just the book. The source of the crime scene DNA is unknown and unknowable. Source attribution for crime scene samples has been largely abandoned in forensic DNA for more conservative methods such as Bayes' theorem and the likelihood ratio. Yeah, me and Gosney talked about that in my stream a couple of months ago. It's 1 in 3 quadrillion that it can be somebody else. And they explain all the testing and then all the probabilities.
Right.
So that is the standard of today, which Miss Treffinger avoided completely. Source attribution is a victim of the uniqueness fallacy and misconstrues the meaning of the weight of the comparison. The random match probability nor the likelihood ratio have any correlation between the number of people on the planet, and so when it either number exceeds the number of people of the planet, that does not mean the DNA profile trait combination is unique to that person, though we might expect a random match to an evidence DNA profile to be a rare event. Rare events happen. Source attribution suggests the chance of a random match is 0, and that is not the case.
Yeah, and the reason this is important, folks, is because if you believe the DNA identification is absolute, then there's nothing that can rebut that evidence. But in fact, there can exist evidence that the alleged suspect was in fact at a different location, could not have provided that DNA. Maybe it's on the other side of the globe, and yet in the laboratory you're claiming a match. Well, the match has to be incorrect.
Yep, and DNA in itself is not evidence. DNA is a supporting evidence of other evidence. For instance, we can take Zachariah Anderson's with the pin-sized speck of what they claim was blood, which they claim had Rosalio's DNA. Well, are there other circumstances than a murder that could have put that there? And it is. They traced Mr. Gutierrez's phone to Zach's location and in the end of April. There you have the chance of transfer DNA. You have Shady Sadie dated Mr. Gutierrez, and Shady Sadie and Zach, kids together. They leave off kids and themselves visiting each other, because transfer DNA doesn't only mean that I put my finger on this. It can mean that I put my hand on this, I give it to Andrew, who also grabs it and then puts his hand on this. And since my DNA is on top of his hand, now the transfer goes one step further. That is transfer DNA. It doesn't have to mean I touched it. So that is.
And I like to distinguish. Many people don't. A lot of people treat evidence and proof like they're synonyms, but they're not really the same concept. So when you're in court, the jury's hearing two stories, right? They're hearing a story of guilt from the prosecution and a story of innocence from the defense. And those stories are built out of building blocks of evidence. Little bits of evidence can be almost anything that's relevant and probative to help the jury arrive at a decision. But it's not proof. The proof is what happens when a jury processes evidence and decides what they believe and don't believe and how much weight to give it and how little weight to give it. And they come up with a verdict. And the verdict is the determination of proof beyond a reasonable doubt in that case, or the failure to do that. So it's the processing of the evidence by the jury that results in what they determine to have been proven. That's the proof at the end. The trouble is when we have this evidence being presented in court, like DNA evidence, as if it were proof, as if it were the ultimate conclusion of what is true and what is not true. That's not supposed to happen in presentation in the courtroom. That's supposed to happen through the processing of evidence by the jury to arrive at a verdict.
Yeah. Do you want to take this part?
Sure.
Yeah.
Trace DNA evidence, statement of limitations. This is the starting position. 1, although a DNA profile has been obtained, it is possible neither to identify the type of cells from which the DNA originated, nor to state when the cells were deposited. 2, it is not possible to make any conclusion about transfer and persistence of DNA in this case. It is not possible to estimate when the suspect last wore the watch, if it is his DNA. And 3, because the DNA test is very sensitive, it is not unexpected to find mixtures. If the potential origins of DNA profiles cannot be identified, it does not necessarily follow that they are relevant to this case, since transfer of cells can occur as a result of casual contact. The definition of trace DNA will encompass a large proportion of crime samples that are currently processed within a DNA laboratory. It will include... Tick, tick, tick.
Okay.
That's it, I guess.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
So one thing people should keep in mind, too, is that when we do this DNA analysis, there's a large part of the analysis is an amplification of the DNA sample, a chemical, biological amplification of the sample. And just like you can take a photo and blow it up, or you can take an audio signal and amplify it, you can introduce distortions and errors in that process. So what you're actually evaluating at the end is not the sample per se, but the amplification of the sample, which, as we saw in the Rittenhouse case, when they were doing the pinch and zoom with the images, it's not really the same thing.
Yeah. Let's see here. Lisa Treffinger fails to correct and in fact confirms with the prosecution attorney that her results can be stated within the standard of scientific certainty in the event a question is asked and her scientific opinion aligns with what is being implied or questioned. From the National Commission of Forensic Science within National Institute of Standards and Technology, a paper titled Testing Using the Term Reasonable Scientific Certainty was released. 4 here. Okay, that's just a link. This paper discussed the many issues involved when using this blanket term, such as its misleading guidance, non-scientific foundation, lack of specificity, and the term's criticism from academic and policy writing. This terminology is outdated and was not originally intended to be within the court system to verify scientific knowledge in expertise within criminal cases. Okay, I did not know that. The words reasonable, degree, and scientific certainty should not be part of any scientific explanation or presentation. These words suggest to scientists for lawyers as part of legal advocacy. Nothing is 100% in science, and therefore using phrases like scientific certainty are misleading to jurors and lay people who are unaware of the limitations and error rate of the science being questioned. No human endeavor is without error and without limitations. Not correcting the attorney when he stated that the term a reasonable degree of certainty was a standard was error. Reasonable degree of scientific certainty has no meaning in science. It may very well be a legal standard, but not a scientific standard. And Treffinger is not a lawyer at liberty to comment on legal standards. Who? Everybody got that? because now we're into science speaks. In science, you have the scientific method. Nothing is 100%. Not even the Higgs boson or the God particle was 100% confirmed. It was confirmed down to the 5th decimal, I think, but still not 100% confirmed. That is why you have to use numbers.
Right. The scientific method is not an answer, folks. It's a process.
Yeah, it's a
it's
process.
An ever ongoing process.
Yeah. It's the art of questioning what's real, more or less, or confirming prior theories by testing and evaluating the results of those tests. And that's why you have to use numbers when you present. For all the pieces of hair evidence tested, she stated that they matched Rosalio Guterres without providing a statistic or likelihood ratio to give weight to the comparison. Hey, Steve.
Hello.
Hey, Steve.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. We are reading through her letter.
We got my little email there.
Yeah, and I could download it from LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, I just got back from church, so I'm jumping into the middle of this. So, but I saw you were doing this, and I wanted to hop in. Yeah, Tiffany, if you want to see just, and I'm just completely out of context, I haven't seen anything up to this point, but Tiffany Roy was interviewed on my Rumble channel, and we talked about this case, and I sent her the Zachariah Anderson stuff to have her look at it. And she's a very good and what I would call independent DNA analyst, and so she's very much a believer in science and not propaganda and tools. Like, she doesn't believe science should be infected by money or agendas or anything like that. It's like that science is objective, and so she's really an excellent expert on DNA, and that's why I had her on my channel to talk about DNA. So anyway, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting.
No worries. We have doubled the numbers since we started. So Tiffany Roy, we read her at her LinkedIn. She is the owner, president of Forensic Aid. She is a volunteer at Expert Working Group on Human Factors in Forensic DNA Interpretation at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. She more or less helps. She writes the books and the standards that should be applied in trials. I mean, there are few forensic DNA experts at her level, I would argue.
Yes. Well, and the fact is that, well, and Andrew knows this, is that what happens is these like bite mark experts, they form these little cliques and organizations, and they start becoming self-referential and insular, and then they become a tool for whatever propagandist wants to use. So they use it as a weapon instead of looking at it as an evidentiary tool that can tell us things and can say other things. So she's very careful about keeping that line between science and advocacy. And so because it's up to the expert to define that line, and that's called professionalism. And so when she saw this, and of course you and I, you surprise attacked me on your channel with it, and I'm like, when I deal with DNA, I'm not a DNA expert, and I know that, and that's why we have expert witnesses like this guy right above me, because you hire expert witnesses to give you a fair and impartial and unbiased analysis of what's going on. And I know that I saw it. My expert eye in trial said what's going on here is problematic. And I wanted to send it to somebody who is fair and objective, who I would rely on. And that person was Tiffany Roy. And so she obviously takes her profession very seriously, and as all we should. And I know that Andrew takes his profession. You know, when he speaks on something, like I've sent him a couple things and I don't agree. I don't like what he tells me, but he's the expert. I'm like, I don't want you to tell me what I want to hear. I want you to tell me what the truth is.
No, because if you tell people if you tell people what they want to hear, you become a states expert.
Well, you just become a whore.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's another word for it.
But I don't want, even if people are like laughing, like we talk about the suitcase murder trial. She's having trouble finding an expert to say what they want them to say, because a true expert is somebody who's going to give their honest opinion based on their professional credit and their credentials, like Andrew's credentials. He's not going to go out there and say whatever somebody wants. He is an independent voice, and he's going to say what he believes is the truth, regardless of who's hiring him, regardless of what the politics are. And that's what you want out of a good expert. You do not want somebody who's just going to mouthpiece, be a puppet for whatever advocacy group, nor should the attorney want that. I hate to.
Here's the problem, though. So I can tell you, when just think about normal human motivations and incentives, it costs me a lot of money, to be honest. I could make a lot more money if I would do legal consults and give people the answers they wanted. I just won't do that. But probably the majority of cases that come into my office asking for legal consults, I tell them answers they don't like. And then, of course, you don't get the consult.
Well, and I watched a trial recently, which shall remain unnamed, and the state expert was paid $250,000 for their expert testimony. The defense expert testified for free on the same topic. Yeah. So this idea of, well, like you say, if you want to sell yourself out, but I just can't do that. I know Andrew can't. And I respect people who have integrity and honesty. And Tiffany Roy is that kind of person in a DNA context. So the fact that she's taken the cause up of Zachariah Anderson and actually taken some action is to be greatly respected. And I'm humbled that she took the ball and ran with it. All I did was transmit what you sent me and the advocates for Zachariah Anderson, and just forward it to her. This is her initiative. So anyway, I hate to interrupt.
And it's important for people to keep in mind. I mean, I know for me, one of my passions for the law is that in a courtroom, we're striving to arrive at some approximation of truth, right? You never have absolute truth, but you're striving to get as close to absolute truth as possible. And when you see these corruptions of the process that are deterring that core mission of a courtroom, it's reprehensible.
Yeah, I couldn't.
And as a true professional, when she sees her expertise in her profession being abused, it's professionally repugnant, and it's tough. And I got to say, it takes courage to do what she's doing. I mean, it's kind of a thankless thing to do what she's doing, because all the pressures are to say, just let it go.
Just get along.
Get along.
We're all on the same team.
And courage is a very underappreciated and rare commodity in this world. And I think we need to applaud her for taking a stand. And I'm very oppressed.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's continue there. All right. We were there. The piece of evidence referred to as W1 was known to be the swabbing of a doorknob, and when questioned by the attorney about the source level attribution of the DNA from the swab, Lisa Treffinger said, "I believe this was a touch DNA swab." This testimony also exceeds the limits of the testing performed by Treffinger. As stated by Jill more than 20 years ago, the cellular source of the DNA profile recovered from an item is unknown and unknowable.
Just to be clear, we're differentiating here between touch and transfer.
Yeah.
Because if it was transferred, that doesn't mean the person whose DNA it was ever touched the doorknob, right? Yeah. But by saying it's touch, you're saying this person touched that doorknob.
Yeah. Treffinger refers to the source of the DNA profile as skin cells, or in the case of the cell phone swab Z1, touch swab of cell phone as skin cells. First, based on the testing that was performed in this case, they offer no information regarding whether the DNA from the item Z1 is the result of a touch or a sneeze or some other means of transfer. Second, the testing performed in this case cannot provide information regarding the cellular source of a DNA profile. Even where, big words here, serological results are considered. A telltale sign that this is not a scientific opinion based on sufficient facts or data is that it is not contained in the written report Treffinger produced. Opinions included in the reports and notes from a testing would be technically reviewed, administratively reviewed, and subject to the quality requirements of accreditation and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Opinions not included in the report are not subject to quality review. As such, they should not be offered as evidence. In this instance, Treffinger's opinions were pure speculation.
So can I interrupt just a second? Because I didn't watch the trial. So was none of this challenged at trial during her testimony?
Yeah, it was challenged. She offered opinions that wasn't in the report. The defense objected, and Schroeder let it in.
Okay,
after
fair enough.
15-20 minutes of...
But at least it's preserved then.
Yeah, at least it's preserved. Yeah.
Yeah,
So there were a lot of...
the judge would just kind of let what he would hoo and haw, but ultimately he would just let the state get away with murder. And defense, I thought the defense trial counsel was pretty good. I mean, but the problem, most people don't understand that if you have a corrupt prosecutor and you have a judge that's wishy-washy or not willing to stand up, the defense really can't do anything. Your defense attorney is, if you don't have a fair judge and you don't have a fair prosecutor, the system is out of whack already. And you had that combination. This judge would he'd hoo and haw and he'd pretend like he was this, but I don't know what was up with the judge. He was not. Well, I didn't watch the whole thing either. I only saw snippets. Mr. Nick over here was the one.
Yeah, I know how hard it is to get Steve, especially in a subject he's not the expert in. So I invited him to a comparison between good DNA testimony and bad DNA testimony. And then I showed him the DNA testimony from the Shabusiness trial, I think. And
I watched the Shabusiness trial with Jeff Legal Vices, who I see is in the chat. Hi, Jeff.
Oh, hi, Jeff. Yeah. Oh, yeah. They are getting a good appellate lawyer in the Zachariah Anderson. A really good one. They are in the end means of signing a contract with Natalie Wisco's team. So, yeah. So now we can't ask her anymore. Damn it. Jeff, you have a link if you want to.
Come on, Jeff. We love seeing you on Sunday. Here's Sunday. I saw your link and I hopped on because I knew that this would. And of course, I saw Andrew here. And how can I not? He looks so tanned, and I'm so pale and pasty.
Yeah, but I showed you,
Steve. I stay away from those sidecars.
Yeah. I showed you good, but that was normal, as you said. This is standard. Why are you showing me this? This is by the books. And then I showed you the DNA expert testimony from the Zachariah Anderson.
Well, you knew that it would rile me up.
Yeah.
And I know that every time I tune into that, and I was just so busy I couldn't watch that trial. It was a long trial. And everything I saw was just absurd. The prosecutor was out of control, and the judge wasn't sustaining objections he should have. And it was frustrating, but I just I couldn't follow. It just didn't work out. But I will say that the DNA stuff that I did watch, it was just so out of line with anything that I've seen in trials. It just didn't comport with the way and the thing, see, here's the thing, like when you do it enough, this is doing trial work. It helps in appellate work because it's like, okay, I do it and you see things and they just kind of happen a certain way. And there's a pattern. It's like you've seen 1,000, 3,000, 5,000 pleas. After a while, it's like, okay, you see this. And when something doesn't go according to that thing, it's like, something's wrong here. And so that's like you wave the flag and say, okay, now I got to slow down and look at it carefully. And that's what happened on when you showed me, because it was so out of left field, that DNA testimony, the way it was presented, the way there was no qualification, and it was just very weird. And so I just knew that it was wrong. That's why I sent it to Tiffany.
Yeah, and this is one of the things why I believe that having this LawTube, where we are streaming trials, we help educating people, because normal laymen, they don't, few see this. I mean, I've seen a good bunch of these true crime tubers. and they don't get it because they have no training. And you need training, and I believe that's what's good with the LawTubes.
I mean, some of the LawTubers just aren't very good.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
But the big ones like the Law and Crimes and the Court TVs, I mean, it's in their interest to spin the narrative of the case that's going to make them the most money, get them the most eyeballs, get them the most clicks. And I've been interviewed on those shows about cases, and when I give my perspective on the case, if it's contrary to the narrative they want to spin, that's the last time you're ever on the channel. They're not interested in it. You start talking about facts and law instead of like the crime drama aspect of it, they completely lose interest.
Yeah, but I'm appreciative of Court TV and Law and Crime because now they have stopped copywriting, doing copyright strikes. So apparently they see the value in us, even though they have their audience, their enormous audience. They see the value of us. Because apparently we drive people to them as well. So it's I'm appreciative of that, but I don't like how they do it. 2 a.m. in bed listening to you. Aw, Jeff. Oh God, please say he's wearing clothes. But let's continue here. Treffinger also answers in an affirmative about events that could have caused someone's DNA to be on an item. While it may be appropriate to educate the jury on research regarding transfer, persistence, prevalence, and recovery of DNA, those descriptions should not be case-specific circumstances or evidence. Treffinger confirms she believes that the cells which are responsible for the DNA are skin cells or blood, but does not provide the basis for her opinion. In fact, no serological data or result can inform a DNA analyst of these things. Yeah, but she was the blood and the DNA test. So she has a lab. She tests things. Calling her as an expert instead of an actual expert, but she was voir dire as an expert. So yeah, here we go. And that's something I've seen in the Young Thug Rico trial. The amount of garbage the prosecution wants in as experts is astounding.
Well, they are experts in their narrow technical field. The problem becomes when you take that narrow scientific expertise and you allow them to come to conclusions of fact, which is the province of the jury.
Yeah, and in this case, Miss Treffinger, she runs a lab. She tests all the things. Here's the thing, and I think you said it also, Steve, that in the book, when you are having such a small test sample that you destroyed by a test, you have to follow protocol around it. And she didn't. There's no recording or notes whatsoever on how she actually performed that test.
Yes, well, and this is the thing, is that what Andrew just said, and this is where Tiffany, I know it gets her cackles up, because you've got things that you can say and you've got things you cannot say, right? And experts are invaluable, but the professional knows what the limits of their expertise are. They know what the circle for which they can testify and where they can't go outside of. It's very, very clear. And we talk about the bullet matching, for example. Say, okay, this is a 38 caliber revolver. This is a 38 caliber bullet. This bullet is consistent with being fired out of this bullet. It could have been fired. The firearm is operable. All of those things are fine. That's perfectly appropriate expert technique. There was a 5-shot revolver. One had been fired. There was an empty shell casing still within the revolver's chamber. All of that's consistent with the evidence of the crime scene, the defense here. All that's good. But once they say, and this particular bullet was fired out of this particular firearm, they've gone too far. And it's the same thing here. It's like, okay, the DNA, this test, it can include, here's the percentages, here's the numbers. We can say all that. But then once you step outside of your narrow box, now you're speculating. Now it's not based on science. And this person is qualified. It's like what they are saying is science. And so they're putting the stamp of certainty and endorsement on an opinion that is not based in any kind of facts that are before them. Then it becomes advocacy, and it shouldn't have been allowed.
And I know in my own expert witness testimony, I tell the jury, I say, listen, I'm not here to give you an answer. It's your job to come up with the answer. Was this self-defense or not self-defense? What I'm here to do is to clarify the question for you. This is the proper question. And if you believe the evidence supports A as an input to that question, then the only reasonable conclusion is guilty. And if you think it's B, then the only reasonable conclusion is not guilty on the basis of self-defense. I can't tell you if it's A or B. You have to decide what the evidence is. But whatever you decide, this is the proper legal question based on use of force law.
Ooh, let's continue. Her casework training and expertise and experience would not be sufficient to inform on such an opinion as the one offered here. She makes statements for several items that Rosalio Guterres is the source of the blood on those items. She is connecting dots and making associations that are the province of the trier of fact.
Boom.
Screening tests indicate the presence of peroxidase activity, not blood. The hematrace test detects the presence of human hemoglobin, but also reacts with ferret blood. Lisa Treffinger performed a comparison of DNA profiles from several items of evidence to the DNA profile of Rosalio Guterres, but opining on the source of the DNA profile as blood and opining that the source of the blood was Rosalio Guterres was completely improper. Yeah. I would ask the lab to review what actually is reported in her report to see how the statements made in testimony differ. The reason these statements aren't included in the report is because it's an opinion that goes a step too far and exceeds the information modern testing can provide. The inclusion of source attribution statements in her report is problematic enough, but this, coupled with the attribution of the blood to Rosalio Guterres, is egregious. The reason this opinion was not included in her report, not reviewed by her peers, and not consistent with the quality standards of the FBI is because these are not scientifically supported statements. And yes, they had one guy up to confirm her results and opinion. He refused to say anything about an opinion she had that wasn't in the report. So she wasn't backed up on it. That was not only was it not peer-reviewed, the peer reviewer refused to acknowledge her opinion. And it's still, yeah. And my opinion, most of you know about my opinion about peer review.
Well, peer review and the social sciences are broken, but the DNA is not social science. DNA is about as good a science as you can possibly imagine. And that's one of the reasons I know Tiffany Roy is upset by this, because now you're trying to, well, and this is, you see this politically across the spectrum, we're trying to capture science on behalf of an agenda. And what she's saying here is the opinion was not consistent with the standards of review. It's not scientifically supported. And see, this is where it really becomes harmful, because that DNA expert is seen as science, and science is certain, and science is very careful. And when that science is now hijacked and you put a gun to head of science and you say, okay, now science says he's guilty. Science says that when it's not supported, that is so damaging. It's almost impossible to overcome. That is critical testimony that creates false convictions. And here's why: because the person's operating outside of the scope of what they can actually say. Yeah, because she made herself the finder of fact in this trial. She's not supposed to be. You have the finder of fact. That's the jury.
She answered the question that the jury, as Andrew said earlier. As soon as your opinion goes to this is it, then you take the fact. Then you take the, what do you call it? You take away.
It invades the province of the jury. Right.
Yeah. Thank you. Julio says, it's as if she was in a white lab coat telling us it is safe and effective. Okay. Oh, and thank you, It's Me Josie, for gifting 5 memberships. Thank you so much to O'Neill, Nanya Witness, Soul Souffle, Ace, and Lynn Dalton. I think all of you are previous members. Okay. Yeah, as 20th Century Fox says, Judge Schroeder allowed her to be the finder of fact. Yeah. She makes other statement that exceeds her expertise, like using bleach to clean a car. Her responses to that line of question were purely speculative and based on no scientific evidence, tests, or data. Yeah, I mean, she claimed... No, she didn't... what was... Oh, I can't remember exactly, but I think her testimony was that cops sensed bleach. She didn't. And then something about the reason they couldn't find any sort of bleach cleaning via luminol was that sometimes it doesn't react. I don't have those photos, but even if you clean by bleach and it doesn't leave traces of the bleach, you see the traces of hemoglobin. Even if it's destroyed, you still have traces of it, and you see it, the swipe movements. And Zach's van had nothing in that reacted to either bleach or blood. Nothing. Not even the speck that they claim was blood. It was completely dark when they took that luminol photo. I'm so pissed off. The most serious misstatement during the DNA testimony were related to item A1. First, she states that what was observed for item A1 was so small, it was the size of a pinhead, so no serological testing of any kind was performed on that item. She speculates that given the color, I would say that it would be blood. This is completely inappropriate, knowing the extensive number of substances that can react with a screening test for blood, which can also have the same color and appearance as blood. Second, there were many kinds of blood that don't come from human people that would react with a screening test for blood.
Yeah, and just so Andrew knows what this is, I thought this was the most damning, quote, piece of, quote, evidence that was non-evidence that was really, I mean, when it came, I like I said, I only saw snippets, but this was something there. So the idea was that he killed the person, put them in the body, into the van, and then that's disposed of the body somewhere else, right? And there was a pinprick of blood right on the kind of, supposedly there's a red dot of pinprick of something that they said was blood based on the color that they didn't test. And it's like, now, first of all, you know that if you stab a body to death, there's blood all over the place, right? Yeah. And the fact that this little pinprick is right in the center of a very easily cleaned thing. Everything else is spotless, except for this little pinprick that's on this flat vinyl place, and that they say it's blood, and it was ridiculous. But the fact that it was like, this is blood, was damning because it's in his van, right? And there was also no control on that van, so it could have been transferred by a cop from within the crime scene. There were all kinds of problems for this. If it was blood, the fact that this was ridiculous testimony, but it was really the linchpin of the conviction, and this, it was really out of line that this was. So,
and here's the thing: there were lots of brownish specks of something in that car. They tested I think dozens of these, none of them were blood. But this specific speck, brownish in color, by opinion was. I mean, if you test 30 specks of brownish substances and none of them comes back as blood, how can you, with science backing you up, claim that specific speck?
I mean, I've worked murder cases where there was a single stab wound and the room in which it occurred looked like someone took a garden hose of blood and just sprayed it on the ceilings, on the walls, on the stairs, everywhere. But even if that's not the case, even if you don't hit a high pressure artery in the body where you get that kind of spray, we've probably all had the experience where we accidentally cut ourselves in the kitchen and then we can't remember where the Band-Aids are. So we have to go hunting around for the Band-Aids while we're holding something against our finger. Blood gets everywhere, man.
And also the fact Zachariah Anderson is a much smaller man. So that just the physical ability to transport dead weight of a body into the van. And if you've been around enough crime scenes, and I've been around enough crime scenes to see, for the only blood to be in that van would be a pinprick on that vinyl side of the side where the van lid goes up and it's off is absurd. It's just not consistent with the way I would see any evidence. But the fact that you have an expert saying that this is blood consistent was very damning. I thought that was a very hard.
A speck of blood seems to me the least likely outcome. I would expect either a ton of blood or somehow they got a mattress bag or something and completely sealed up the body, and you'd expect no blood then. But a speck of blood seems to me the least likely outcome consistent with the narrative of the prosecution.
Exactly. Based on your experience.
Just for comparison, here's me, Dave, and Baker. It is like Dave rolling up a dead me in a carpet and lifting me without leaving drag marks, droplets, or anything except a small pin-sized speck in a car. That's the comparison. I mean, Zach was 6 feet and 215. Rosalio was between 250 and 270 pounds. I'm close to 6'4". I am currently at 248 pounds. So add 20 pounds to that picture and you have Rosalio. I mean, and that is why I believe they showed no full-size photos of Rosalio in the trial. Because all of a sudden it would be very apparent. And I'm quite disappointed that the defense didn't do it.
There were also some, and I don't know how much Andrew's, I mean, I know enough about it to get me upset. And another one is that, the frozen phone in the freezer, is very consistent with some sort of other alternative motive.
Yeah, they found how that wasn't exculpatory evidence, I can't fathom, because they found Rosalio's phone in the freezer 9 days later. After the prosecution released the crime scene, they found the phone. It had unknown DNA alleles on it. Somebody who wasn't Rosalio, a member of Rosalio's family, or Zach, touched that phone. At some point, probably around the time of the crime. And it wasn't Zach, it wasn't Rosalio, or a member of the Rosalio's family. How is that not? I mean, I've heard of cases where evidence like that was brought up in appeal and was, okay, that's exculpatory. Release the man. Someone else's DNA was at the crime scene. I mean, I
well, okay, we're going to move on to because that one is one. There's a lot of problems with the state theory, and that's why this stuff is so damaging.
Because one person's testimony like this, improper, unethical, can make a jury ignore all the problems. If this were let's see, if this were sufficient scientifically to opine that the stain is blood, there would be no need for serological testing in any case. Scientists can provide opinions using reliable methods and based on sufficient facts or data to case evidence. Treffinger's opinion that A1 was blood was based on no scientific tests, no scientific data. It was pure opinion and would never satisfy the legal standards that govern scientific evidence in US courts. She appeared to use a process of elimination approach along with the physical appearance of A1, and proceeded to offer the opinion that the DNA on item A1 came from the blood of Rosario Guterres. In an email with Angelina Gabriel, spelling unknown, I do not have a transcript, she previously recognizes in writing that she could not confirm A1 was blood. The prosecutor asks her why her opinion here today differs from what she expressed in her email, and her justification was that Miss Gabriel didn't ask my opinion. In science, an analyst's personal opinion does not matter. Under Wisconsin law, an expert can offer an opinion under 90702. Who wants to take this? My mouth is dry. Anyone wants to read this?
Well, these are basically, I think, Daubert criteria. I'm not sure if they're a Daubert or a Frye jurisdiction, but these are basically Wisconsin law criteria for scientific testing. So that's what Tiffany is reciting here is the Wisconsin law, which is 907.02. Again, I'm not a Wisconsin lawyer, don't know anything out about it, but this to me comports with the standards by which Wisconsin applies to letting expert witnesses opine on whatever they're going to opine on. So in this case, we have 1 and 2. Number 1, if scientific, technical, or other specialized knowledge will assist the trier of fact to understand the evidence or determine a fact at issue. Okay, so that's the getting an expert to talk about something. What do? A witness qualified as an expert by knowledge, skill, experience, training, or education may testify thereto in the form of an opinion or otherwise. So an expert can give their opinion, and then here's the criteria. If the testimony is based upon sufficient facts or data, the testimony is the product of reliable principles and methods, and the witness has applied the principles and methods to the reliability of the facts of the case. So that is your criteria by which a scientific witness can opine and give an opinion. So you have 3 criteria that they need to meet: sufficient facts or data, product of reliable principles and methods, and they've applied those principles and methods to those facts. So that's looks like the Wisconsin standard. That's not a Daubert standard, and it's not. It looks like a mixed Daubert-Frye standard, but
yeah. And since she didn't have it in her report, she did not test. She didn't apply the principle and methods on the facts.
There was insufficient facts or data, and that opinion was not the basis of applying the principles and methods to the facts because there were insufficient facts. So she's saying it fails at least 2 of these points, 1 and 3.
Yeah. And
by the way, this is a good appellate issue.
Yeah. Notwithstanding sub 1, the testimony of an expert witness may not be admitted if the expert witness is entitled to receive any compensation contingent on the outcome of any claim or case with respect to which the testimony is being offered.
That's kind of standard. I don't know. Yeah. Is there an allegation of contingency? I don't know if that's why that needs to be added because, what's banned is an expert getting paid for by the head. So if we get a conviction,
right. She is paid by the state. So.
Yeah, I know, but she can get paid.
But she's paid the same whether it's an acquittal or conviction. That's the point. If you get paid more, like if I went out as an expert and said, it's X amount of dollars for me to testify, and then I get 10 times that much if you get an acquittal. That wouldn't.
Oh, now we come. This was interesting. Treffinger testified, my opinion is that it was blood, when describing the possible cellular origins of item A1. This was based on no testing, no facts, no data. It was based only on the appearance of the stain. that is pure speculation. She further stated that skin cells don't give a robust profile, which is completely scientifically untrue, and that as to item A1. It is my opinion that it was blood. I have never, in my 16-year career, witnessed a DNA analyst expand so far outside of their expertise. The renowned scientist Dr. Henry Lee, and Dr. Henry Lee is in a bit of trouble, if that's the O.J. Simpson, the expert. He is now in a bit of legal trouble. I've heard about this from other sources. The renowned scientist Dr. Henry Lee was just personally sued in the state of Connecticut for offering an opinion that a particular stain was blood without any proof that he performed any testing to support that opinion. Here, this witness freely admits it. This is certainly a violation of the ANAB guiding principles and any other ethical codes this analyst may be bound by. The evidence presented at the trial of Zachariah Anderson was misstated and overstated in a very serious and unscientific manner. Immediate steps should be taken by this laboratory to review the testimony of Lisa Treffinger in this case and other cases. Retraining should be required for this analyst and any other analyst from the state of Wisconsin laboratory system laboring under these misconceptions. Attorneys for both parties should be notified of the substance of this complaint, the subsequent investigation, and remedial actions taken. Sincerely, Tiffany A. Roy. Oh, this is the, yeah. Yeah, that was the letter. That is...
Here, I'm going to put in the live chat. This is the link to my YouTube interview with Tiffany Roy on DNA. So if you want to repost that, I don't know if you can do that, Nick, but if people want to go watch my interview with this person who wrote this letter, I reached out to her because I like on my, well, of course, Andrew and I, we're doing a master class with American law courses, first-year law courses, and we're having a lot of fun with that. And sometimes I'll, Andrew knows that I can't help, but he's like trying to put a bridle on a wild horse. Sometimes I get out of control and I find things I want to talk about that don't fit into our classes. And one of them was this DNA. And I try to educate people on my channel about these ideas of law. And I have, being in the position I am, I'm blessed to be around some great experts. I had one on false interrogations and my DNA, and I wanted to do a overview of what DNA is and is not. So I invited Tiffany Roy on my channel because she's somebody in Florida that is independent and not some kind of, slave to say she's somebody who has courage to say the truth in our overly politicized and divided body. So if you want, maybe you can repost the link to that. So people, if you're interested in this topic area and want to know who she is and maybe want somebody to opine their opinion, I would highly recommend that video. It was about 3 months ago I did that.
Yeah. Interview. There. All right. And I have this comment from Julio. Thank you for your super chat. How can the state say blood in the van if it's not in the actual report and was opinion? Because the judge allowed it.
Exactly. That's the whole, it's exactly the question. How can they say that? They can't. Well, it looked like blood. It was a tiny pinprick. It was like that, so small that you couldn't even see it. It's like they had to zoom in, and it was in an odd place. I mean, it just is so inconsistent with my idea of crime scenes and especially stabbing scenes. Stabbing scenes are brutal with the amount of blood, and to move a body into a van and to have one little speck of van on that point is just not, it's illogical to me. It doesn't comport with anything that I've seen. And, if, of all the places that you'd clean with bleach, that would be like number one. You'd wipe that. So how did one little spot remain? And everything else is spotless. It just doesn't work. So, but then again, blood in Zach's van of the victim is damning. So, we're going to find this little dot of something of uncleanliness in your van, and we're going to call it blood because, gee, it looks like blood. Yet with no testing, with no evidence, no scientific basis, that's how you get wrongful convictions. Yeah, bludgeoning is not any prettier than stabbing, Michael. I see Michael Stetson. He says it was a bludgeoning. Bludgeonings aren't much prettier.
Where do you bludgeon someone? You do it in the head. Where's a lot of blood come out of?
The head. Yeah, and the only reason why they had to say stabbing was because Munch, the prison snitch, said that Zachariah Anderson confessed to him yeah, after a nightmare where Zach...
Oh, that was the dream, right? Well, that was the dream. You know about this, Andrew?
No.
The dream.
What about the confession? Is another absurdity. What was it like? Was it Zach that was supposedly dreaming? He confessed while he was asleep.
Yeah,
and he shouted out in his dream.
He shouted out in his sleep, "Die, die, die, mother effer!" And then Munch confronted him the next day. "Did you do it?" And he looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Yes, I did." This after 2 years in prison and being cellmate with this Munch.
And also, so we had testimony about Zachariah supposedly shouting out in a dream while he was asleep. It's another absurdity. And I also interviewed an expert on jailhouse informants.
Yeah, don't talk to anybody.
Yeah, no, but he was of the opinion. He's a professor at University of Alabama, I think, and he's written multiple books on jailhouse snitches. And he is of the opinion that many false convictions, wrongful convictions, come out of jailhouse snitches because they are in such tremendous pressure to give the state what they want. And his opinion is that jailhouse snitches should never be allowed. Now, and he also, I was interviewed, I'll pull that one up too if you want to see, but every element of false conviction is in this case.
Yeah, let's see if I can find that. Sex case, cast of characters. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, it was like hypnosis testimony has been disallowed. I don't know how, even if it's true, which I am skeptical, highly skeptical, by what measure of truth is a statement that you make in a dream shouting out while you're asleep? How is that a statement against interest?
Yeah.
It seems,
Yeah. And he also said, and the prosecution said that we have nothing, he has nothing to gain from this. There is no written that he will get a relief from his possible sentence. He was up for 10 years to life, Mr. Munch, for drug charges. And
they dropped
3 months later, he's out on probation. I mean,
that's after the trial, I take it.
Yeah, after the trial. Yeah.
Right.
And of course, the judge should not have let that in because the harmful effect, the prejudicial effect, is greater than the probative value, and the credibility is extremely suspect. There should be a screening function towards that type of evidence. And again, the judge just let it in. Let everything in. Let the jury decide and let the jury clean it up. They'll figure it out.
Yeah, and of course, a core function of a court is to act as a gatekeeper on this stuff, is to act as a gatekeeper on evidence and on legal arguments that the jury is allowed to hear. We don't let the jury hear just everything that either party wants to present to them. It has to pass certain thresholds of reliability, burdens of production. There's standards for getting this stuff, because otherwise we end up with an inherently untrustworthy verdict at the end, as we appear to have here.
Yeah. Everything about this trial is so bad.
And this was the same judge that had
Rittenhouse,
right?
But I see in the comments he's apparently suffered a head injury between the two trials.
Between the two trials, he suffered a head injury. which
Not that he was great in Rittenhouse, by the way.
yeah, but so that prolonged the next trial with 6 months, I think. And I do know that I think one of the issues is here that Zach never waived his right to a speedy trial.
And I see everybody's saying also the other little factoid is when the dream witness was on the stand, the prosecutor was caught mouthing the words
die, mother effer. I mean, it was caught on Law and Crime camera.
And you cannot talk to a witness once they've taken the stand. This is a problem. And it's the jury won't be instructed that the attorneys can talk to witnesses during the trial. But once they take the stand, they're on their own. You can't coach them, you can't talk to them, you can't advise them. So that sort of any kind of communication to the witness once they're on the stand to bail them out of what they're ever, get them is completely improper.
Yeah. And the alleged victim, Rosalio Guterres, he was a process server for courts in that area. So 7 out of 9 judges couldn't take the trial because they knew him personally. The other one, besides Schroeder, his docket is filled for years. He simply couldn't take it. So this
prosecutor, this was the elected prosecutor, right? So this was the boss of Binger,
right?
And you can obviously see corruption flows from the top down.
Yeah, and So
how often, Steve, in where you practice, do you see the actual elected prosecutor try cases?
Well, we just had that happen in the Othal Wallace, the Ozone Othal Wallace case, and for the shooting of the officer and Officer Rayner it was moved out of state. It was moved out of our county. It was a very big deal in Volusia County, moved up to Clay County. And I think a lot of times it becomes media cases because we have elected prosecutors and they want to get media credentials buffed by being the champion and testifying or being, the leader. And I think a lot of it has to do with the media high profileness of the case that's
my point. It's not a routine matter. It's not a routine matter for the elected prosecutor to take a case. If he's taking a lead on the case, there's a reason. That's got nothing to do with being a prosecutor.
But it's completely at the discretion of the lead prosecutor.
Sure, of course.
They're the boss and nobody under them can say no. So if they want to take a case, they can take a case. I mean, they can take a misdemeanor if they want it.
Yeah.
And some of it, I don't know. It's a little odd. It's again goes to, I think, the media circus that was around this particular case.
Yeah. And I think that Wilhelm Media has an hour and 15 minutes video where he goes through, with the help of Solomon Anderson and other people, here are the things that is obviously wrong. And in that they have the snitch confession and stuff like that. And I lost my trail of thought.
And really,
here.
see, all of these little bits of evidence we're talking about, quote, evidence, this is the strongest evidence that was in the case, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And all of them are tremendously problematic. The little spot of blood in his van that wasn't blood, or we have no clue what it was, that was supposedly could have been transferred, could have not been blood, could have been anybody. That was a problem. The jailhouse.
The timeline.
Best evidence. Wasn't this the best evidence? What there was really.
Yeah, there was nothing else because he wasn't. His DNA, fingerprints, or anything were found on the scene of the crime. Nothing of Junior was at Zach's house. The tree farm his family runs, anything except that pin-sized speck of blood. And what else? I saw it in.
Well, and there was just circumstantial. There's a lot of circumstantial stuff that shows.
And the timeline was entirely based on Zach's phone being off for a certain amount of time, which according to the prosecutor gave him time to drive to the apartment, do all of that, smash head in, stabby, roll up in carpet, lifting it up, even though he had a bad back, put the phone in the freezer for some odd reason, clean up everything about himself, carry this 270-pound plus rolled up rug without leaving drag marks or driplets on the floor, in the hallway, anywhere, into his car, blood-soaked rug. And this van, it's not like a minivan. It's a family van. It's a car, the family van, on a 3x4 foot area where the carpet was cut out. Again, 6 foot, 270-pound man in a rolled up rug, and the only trace is a pin-sized speck of blood.
Well, and there was, and somebody's reminding me in the chat, there was also the daughter's testimony, which is another highly suspect, a lot of problematic, but that was damning against him also. So explain that, because I didn't see that, but I know that you know something about it.
But he, according to the timeline, he drove from his house to Rosario, did all this in 12 to 14 minutes, drove back with him. Here's the thing, not one speed camera, not one camera along the highway picked up his car.
Well, and there's been a lot of people that are pre-Zachariah Anderson folks who have done like map analysis and saying that it's not possible, this timeline's not possible, and the cameras and all. I didn't see, but I've seen people promoting maps of actual evidence of actual innocence that show that the timeline the state was proposing was impossible. But could you address the daughter's testimony too? Because that was, I forgot that is something else.
2 days after Rosario was missing, Sadie shows up at the precinct with her daughter in tow. My daughter has something to tell you. And brought her in for questioning. Normal cop questioning with Shady Sadie there. And then she begins to tell a story. Now, from that part up until a couple of weeks before the trial, 40 hours of interrogation of this 12-year-old child. Most of it non-recorded. Prosecutor Gravely had meetings on 4 or 5 different occasions with that girl, all unrecorded. Every time they had a meeting, she changed her story slightly to fit the prosecution's narrative.
Which is crazy, folks. So the prosecutor is not supposed to be the investigator.
No.
The investigator is who you call as a witness. The prosecutor is supposed to work with the work product of the investigators, not be an investigator himself.
He did this with every independent witness, non-cop, non-expert.
And there was another problem.
Daughter,
at least in Florida too, there are also supposed to be checks on this, in that all interviews of minors are supposed to be video recorded.
Yeah.
And so now I don't know the Wisconsin law, and I don't know if that exists. However, I tell you, I've dealt with that particular requirement on several appellate occasions. And the problem is it's very hard to enforce because we have prosecutors who do this. They don't obey the law, which is their job, is to uphold the law, but they don't obey that law because they want to talk to the minor victims without being recorded. And then what happens? Then they say, oh, well, it was just an error or a mistake. And then the testimony comes in anyway, and there's no enforcement mechanism for that. But I would just say, as a matter of ethics and prosecutorial ethics, when they're communicating with a minor victim, just to dispel any indica of tampering or any allegation, they should record it as a matter of practice. That should be the policy. But you get, when you have somebody that's operating kind of in the outside zone, this is a good tool to manipulate and to extract what you want out of witnesses, is doing it kind of in the darkness.
no clause.
So and actually, of course, bad actors don't want themselves recorded, right? That goes
Yeah.
without saying.
Yeah.
And it's funny. So in this little kerfuffle I'm having with the Colorado Public Defender's Office, I gave a talk at their annual conference that the head of training was, I don't know, based on racial animus or something. The only compensation I was supposed to receive for that talk was a recording of my talk. I told them I just want a recording, and they said, "Fine, we're happy to do that. We're recording it anyway." And then she writes me this nasty letter, and she tells me they destroyed the recording. So how would you possibly?
Most of the stuff, because I loved the grift. You had one of the greatest videos of all time reading that letter, and I will say it's now one of your top seen videos on law.
I think it's like 280,000 views or something on Twitter. It's
crazy.
Insane.
It's going viral. So Branca was going viral with this letter. So thank you, Colorado Public Defender's Office, for writing such a nasty gram. But the only thing that bothers me about the whole thing is the fact that they reneged on providing you with a video. To me, that's a breach of contract. I mean, they promised to do that. What's the point of destroying that video? That to me is absurd.
Especially since their claims of my purported racial misconduct are all based on the video, which now they've destroyed.
Right, which is that's kind of a libelous and a slanderous allegation. And so then they're saying they're going to slander you libelly and then destroy the evidence that would prove your innocence.
Right.
I really have a big problem with that portion of what you said. Otherwise, it's entertaining as hell.
Yeah,
and
I expect what they'll say is, well, you know, we're not publishing this opinion of you, right? So therefore, it's not slander or libel. But of course, we also said there's a blanket prohibition on the Colorado Public Defender's Office making use of your legal expertise. How do you enforce that without publishing the opinion?
No, it's obviously, if that's on behalf of the office, they've published it within the office.
Sure, of course.
And it's assuming you were an expert that cared about being hired as an expert witness, you know,
for no money.
Yeah, but assuming that was the case, that would be a huge knock on an expert's business, and it is published. That's the relevant community which you are seeking to opine expertly if you were doing such a thing. And they don't know who they're dealing with. And can I also announce right here in front of the world and Mr. Branca himself that I will be doing a live stream at 8:00 tonight to discuss the Andrew Branca letter from Colorado, and not necessarily to discuss the letter. I was thinking, should I invite Andrew or not? I have a lot of thoughts, not necessarily on your particular instance, but on the wider implications of what's going on and how the left and wokeness take over our institutions, and using this as a case study on how the left takes control of every large organization in our country, and try to learn from this to figure out some strategies by which we can battle it. Because this is a good case in point. Thank God we've got Andrew Branca here, who's independently, you know, wealthy and independently business and all that, doesn't need all this garbage and can laugh at it. But this type of weaponeering of these organizations is exactly why all our institutions go left. And I have a lot of thoughts, and I want to discuss it. So tonight at 8:00 on the Gosney channels.
Yeah, I mean, it's just shocking. If you look at the mission statement of the Public Defender's Office, of course, I'll just paraphrase, but essentially it's to provide world-class legal representation to the indigent. You know, that's supposed to be their mission statement. And they've thrown that off the wagon in order to preserve their interest in diversity, equity, and inclusion. I don't think that's actually the mission of the Public Defender's Office, but apparently they do. And I wonder if the citizens of Colorado, the taxpayers of Colorado, the indigent in Colorado are aware that their legal representation is being compromised by this allegiance to this cult of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Perfect. Exactly. And that is exactly right. But that is what's happening. And in fact, I have this issue sometimes when I go to death penalty conferences in our public defender, because people want to win on their grounds. Well, I'm coming from it from a different perspective, but you know, I'm very much against the death penalty. And to me, our alliance is a cross-party, cross-ideology, and we have a cause, and that is to knock down Florida's death penalty statute. And we need to bring in all perspectives to make our arguments the best and most effective. Well, if you're saying we don't want to win on your arguments because you're the enemy, is your cause leftist ideology, or is your cause to knock down the death penalty? I thought we're all here to knock down the death penalty. And so, you know, this sort of groupthink that takes over these organizations is something we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah,
Well,
but
of
all
course,
that you
it's
can
your
talk
show,
about
Steve. I'll let you
on.
decide if you want me on
Yeah.
or not. If you want me on, just send me a link. If not, no
I
offense
always
taken.
want you on. You are as a precious gift to, and I will invite you. I hate to even bother you because I feel like I'm going to the well too much.
Well, I'll be happy to talk about it if you want me on. So
Okay,
I'll leave it up to you.
I'll send you an invite. I wasn't going to have any guests, but it's always good to have a foil, and we'll talk about it. It's not necessarily, it's not really even about you, Andrew.
Sure.
It's a larger problem that's societal wide. It's a weaponization of organizations against political enemies and hijacking them for a cause of leftism, when in fact, as you say, the purpose of the organization is to represent the indigent to the most effective ways possible. That's your goal. If your diversity and inclusion goal is superior to that, you have now hijacked the organization and derailed its mission to become part of the woke parasite that's infecting our country. And that's happening in way too many organizations. Example, Disney. So we're going to talk about the wider implications of what's going on.
I mean, imagine if the public defender's office had called me up for this pro bono consult and expert witness testimony for a murder defendant that they're representing. And I had said, well, I'll do it pro bono, but only if you're politically conservative.
Right.
I didn't ask about anybody's politics or anybody's race or anybody's gender or sexual preferences. No, I don't care about any of that. My job as an attorney is to represent people, to argue on behalf of people. I don't care about any of those factors. But the Colorado Public Defender's Office cares more about those factors than they do about effective legal representation of their clients.
And the major problem here, and see, this is the larger problem, is that that's a government entity. How do you disrupt? Because let's assume that they've just all decided they're all a bunch of lefties and they all get together and they think this is the mission of their organization, is to promote woke politics. Well, what do you do about it? They're government. There's no business. They're taxing you. They're funding their ideology. They're selling out their clients, as far as I'm concerned. Well, what do we do about it? What's the society?
And of course, the real tragedy is their clients, because their clients, they're indigent. They don't have an option. They have to have a public defender. They can't afford private representation. So the public defender gives up this mission. Those people have no effective legal representation in criminal trials at all.
But what if you're a conservative? What if you're a rootin' tootin' redneck, gun toting conservative?
But what's the next? What's the next step? They refuse to call a witness that might be actual racist, even though he or she was an alibi witness. No, I refuse to take you in as a witness because I don't like your opinion. That's the next step.
Julio has a question here.
Julio Branca,
it's got to be $10 or Andrew won't answer
it. Julie has been super chatting all stream. Branca, what about the ones in public defender currently who later go to private and then have negative opinion about you based on what the DA said?
Yeah, sure. No, there's clear professional reputational damage from this. There's no question about that. The only question is what I want to do about it.
Yeah. And maybe some Colorado-based litigant.
I'm kind of the opinion that it's a badge of honor, but
yeah.
But, the letter will be framed in my office. Trust me.
I'm telling you, we need to auction that shirt off.
I am. We're going to auction it on Nick's show sometime in the next couple of days. We're just setting up the auction software.
Yeah. Nick Rucada's show, not my show. You have a better.
I got to go with the big audience, my friend.
Yeah. You have to. I would do it in a heartbeat. I would do it. I would frame it. I mean, I haven't framed it yet, but I have. Painting by Jodi Arias that I got as a gift. Of course I'm going to use it. I mean, I would be stupid not to. Okay, but 20 minutes of derailment, and I love it. But in an hour and 20 minutes, I have my serial killer Sunday stream, which is Rumble only, because YouTube hates me streaming serial killer trials.
You don't need to add the qualifier. You just say YouTube hates you.
Yeah. And
YouTube
as per
hates
usual, let's see here if I'm still green on this stream, but I am yellow on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 4
My
of my
wife
6
cooking.
latest
You don't even
streams
know
are
what's
on warning.
smell. I smell the odor of recently burnt lumpia.
No.
Prove me wrong.
Yeah. But thank you, Andrew, for showing up. Thank
Sure,
you,
my
Steve,
pleasure. Thanks for
showing
having
up.
me on. Steve, great seeing you, man. I guess
send
I'll see you
a link
tonight
for
if you send me a
8 o'clock
link.
tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
All right.
Yahoo channel.
Got to find my little. Here it is. All right. Take care, Nick. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye. And to everybody, thank you for your super chats. Thank you for your commentary. Thank you for being here. I really, really appreciate it. If something comes out of this or anything new comes up in the Zachariah Anderson trial, you'll be damn sure I will stream it. And I might do another in combination with my next Weird Swedish Holiday stream. Because our Halloween is not on the same date as your Halloween in the USA. So I might do something with the Zachariah, some fundraising for Zachariah Anderson on that. Okay, thank you all for being here. None of my friends are streaming right now, so I can't send you off anywhere. So find something to watch. Thank you all for showing up. Until next time. Bye-bye.